Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to Jinny Suh presentation. She is running for Texas Land Commissioner. And I'm going to have the questions that we did send to her read by Joyce Hamilton. Joyce, if you're there.
I'm here. Thank you. And first of all, thank you, Jinny, for taking that step. That's very important, and we really appreciate that. I do want to give credit to Sally, Dr. Sally Merrill, for the lion's share of this work. She really dug into the GLO website and did a lot of other research to prepare these questions for you. So, both Sally and I are members of a group called Save RGV, formerly called Save RGV from LNG, which has broadened its scope of environmental concerns. It's a local grassroots organization. The first question pertains to the border wall. Currently, the GLO, General Land Office, under the Abbott administration, is suing the Biden administration in order to enable the GLO to promote the wall or to restart the building of the wall. On the GLO website, your opponent, George P. Bush, has stated that what Biden is doing is wrong, quote. What is your view of the border wall? The second question pertains to the Coastal Resiliency Plan. The GLO Coastal Resiliency Plan, according to the statement on the GLO website, has the purpose of protecting coastal habitats, and the 8 priorities of concern that are mentioned in the plan are altered, degraded, or lost habitat, impact on quality of water quality and quantity, and abandoned or derelict vessels, structures, and debris. So the question is, do these priorities include concerns that many have voiced about the impact on water, habitats of many listed species, and the debris and noise hazards of the proposed Rio Grande LNG and Texas LNG terminals, the SpaceX Super Heavy launch tests, Jupiter pipeline, and other high carbon footprint projects that are being planned to start construction in 2022? If not, why not? And how can these concerns be addressed? The third question has to do with climate change, which is on everyone's mind, of course, and has been for a long time for many of us. Climate change affects all our coastlines, which are suffering many harms from its extremes. These negative effects and habitat loss from oil and gas industry projects clearly diminish the economies here: ecotourism and fishing and shrimping. The GLO site mentions crucial ecosystem services which cannot be replaced once they're destroyed. But are the GLO policies, the current policies of wall construction and facilitating new toxic oil and gas projects, consistent with the concept of preserving habitat and the resulting ecosystem services that we can lose? The next question is, I'm going to switch order here a little bit just for clarity. This would be the first time in decades in Texas that a Texas land commissioner would face up to the oil and gas industry if we can elect and support you. So what experience do you have that would help you be effective in the position of General Land Office leadership, GLO leadership? How would your background in finance, your work in health policy, and as a mother, in terms of educating the public, how would all of these things help you to be an effective leader with the General Land Office in Texas? And finally, what are your ideas for educating the public about the uses of public lands and the importance of protecting our habitats? Thank you.
Okay, those are the questions. I don't know if you can remember all that, Jenny, but hopefully we can address some of them. Let me go ahead and just do a small introduction for Jenny. Jenny is a community organizer, parent, licensed attorney, small business owner, former teacher, and a proud Democrat running for Texas Land Commissioner. She may not be wealthy or famous, but she understands the needs of everyday people and has proven a track record of fighting for what's right for Texans. Growing up as a child of working class Korean immigrants, Jinny knows what it's like to struggle and overcome. She grew up without health insurance as a child and also watched her family's plant nursery business fail when droughts ravaged her small rural town. She has also experienced racism and misogyny firsthand. Despite these hardships, she started college at 16 and earned a BS in biology from the University of Southern California, followed by an MS in biology degree from the University of Michigan, and a JD Juris Doctor from Columbia University. Jinny's rich background and history led her to a life of service and dedicating herself to protecting and helping others, no matter who they are. She is running for office as a proud Asian American working mom of 2 small children because diversity in our candidates will be crucial to Democrats' path to winning and motivating non-voters to cast their ballots for someone they know will fight for them. As the first woman land commissioner, Jinny plans to lead the General Land Office with practicality and a focus on providing much needed funding for public schools and veterans, while also ensuring that Texans can count on having access to good jobs and provide for their families. Jinny's passion for public service is clear. She is a founder and leader of Immunize Texas, a grassroots network dedicated to supporting pro-vaccine legislation, and serves on the board of a nonprofit that provides assistance and support to survivors of domestic violence. Jinny has worked in the past as a biopharmaceutical patent litigator and science teacher, in addition to owning a small retail business. Her history of advocating at the state capitol, strong foundation in science, and practical life experience makes her the right candidate for Texas. Texas needs someone they can trust to use science, facts, and evidence to inform their decisions. Let's everyone welcome Jinny Suh.
Thank you so much. Now, hearing it read, I realized it was not that brief of a bio, so I apologize that everyone had to sit through all that. So yes, my name is Jinny Suh. I am so happy to be invited to speak with you all. I visited with some of you. I can't even remember what month it was at this point, but when I came down to Brownsville and had a really great discussion about what we can do as Democrats to improve things in Texas. So I was asked to kind of give a little bit more color to this bio you just heard. So as you just were told, you know, I am definitely somebody that is running a grassroots campaign. This is about diversity. This is about science. This is about choosing the person that you think will do the best job and not choosing the person that has the most money. I'll just be honest about that up front. I think that's what we need in Texas. We need leaders who are in touch with the people, as we've seen with George P. Bush. When you have someone in office that is so out of touch because he's never had to worry about anything in his life, you get bad decision making and Texans get hurt in the process. So as you heard, I am the founder and leader of Immunize Texas. That's really where I started in politics, being involved, advocating for better public health policy at the Capitol. And I've been doing that for 6 years. This is just, I think, one example of many of the fact that I'm a fighter. I mean, who in their right minds wants to take on anti-vaxxers in Texas? I do. That's who. This is the kind of person that I am. And it has not been easy, and yet I keep at it. I love what I do because I know it's helping my community and I know it's helping Texans. And in that process of learning how to navigate the lawmakers' offices, how to bring people to the table, because I'll be honest, Immunize Texas it's a nonpartisan group, because in Texas, when you want to get bills passed, you can't have it just be sponsored by Democrats. It won't go anywhere. So we've worked with Republican lawmakers and we've brought voices from all sides to the table to talk about how do we protect our communities. So that is one of the things I would say is an important quality in a leader for the Texas Land Commissioner race, because you are going to need someone that can work with oil and gas. And I know there are probably some people out there that want Texas to completely cut off oil and gas. And I'll just be honest that I think that is not something we can do at this time. That would really hurt our economy. And in the end, it would hurt working Texans all over the state. There are so many people dependent. However, there is a path forward where if you have a leader with the right background, the ability to work with others, that can be part of a team, that has the right ideals and values as part of their vision, you can move forward towards a greener Texas. So I'm not sure how much more you all want to hear about me. I would love to answer any questions before I get to these amazing questions that I was sent, if anyone has anything that they'd like to know more about. No? Okay, then I will go ahead and start with the questions. And then I'll sort of summarize in the end a little bit more about the campaign and why it's important and why I'm looking for your support. So again, these were really, really very in-depth questions. And I'm actually grateful for that, because I think, you know, we don't want to choose elected officials just because they are the most popular either. We want people that really know how to do this job. And I'm really grateful that y'all did the research into these issues, because we haven't had a Democratic land commissioner for almost 22 years now. And we've seen what's happened in that office. We've had Republican after Republican that has treated the office as a stepping stone. They have not given it any weight. They have not done their job responsibly. George P. is another example. He is actually not running for re-election as Texas Land Commissioner. He is now running for Attorney General. And a lot of the screw ups that we've seen in the last 6 months or so, I personally believe that he's basically abandoned his job there, because now he's all about becoming the next Attorney General. And that's something we've seen over and over again. But I will point out that when we had a Democratic land commissioner, we saw a lot of good come out of that general land office. A lot of things were done for Texas that put us on a forward path, a forward thinking path to make Texas greener. And I want to revive that spirit of the general land office. I want to lead in a way that is about making sure that Texans are protected, that our environment is protected, and really about preparing for the future. So the first question was about the border wall. So yes, in an unprecedented move, we now have state lands being dedicated to the building of a border wall. This is obviously a very politically biased move. This is not something that is to benefit Texans, in my opinion. This is about George P. trying to win points with Abbott and with the rest of the GOP. And it's an abuse of power, and it's an abuse of our lands. This will not benefit Texas. And I should back up a little bit to explain that the Texas Land Commissioner, their main mission is to really responsibly manage our state lands and to generate revenue, because the money that comes out of the general land office, it supports our public schools through the permanent school fund and veterans benefits. So this is not a situation where setting aside these lands for the border wall doesn't have an effect. It will take money away from public schools and veterans. And that is not something we should be doing in that office. So in my opinion, if as the next Texas Land Commissioner, I obviously would not support that. I would rescind any moves that are made in that direction. I would make sure that those lands are used for the benefit of Texans. And to me, the border wall is not a good use of that land. And then there was a question about financial conflicts. One of the things we've seen, Abbott, in his fundraising efforts for this wall, he's created a fundraising effort where the donors actually don't have to disclose who they are. There was a whole article written about the fact that you can put down any name and donate, and it's hidden and there's no way to really see. And they're saying that it's because they want to make sure these people aren't harassed. Well, I have to list all of my donors to my campaign. Why wouldn't the donors to the border wall have to list their names as well? Okay. And then are there any other questions about that, or I'll just move on to the second question?
Move on.
Sorry? Was that a yes to move on?
Yes, you can move on.
Okay. Just want to make sure. So the second question was really about coastal habitats. You know, are we actually going to protect our coastal lands from things like SpaceX, from LNG, from the Jupiter pipeline? Currently, I would say, again, we see an abdication of duty. George P. could have done something about SpaceX, for instance, in the Boca Chica beach, but he hasn't. And this is a violation of our Open Beaches Act. We are restricting access to public beaches that are supposed to be there for the benefit of Texans. And that's not even getting into the debris, the noise pollution, the basically the poisoning of our waters. And then of course, LNG, that's another issue we have to deal with, where we're talking about refineries and processing plants and storage facilities all being put in our coastal wetlands areas. And coastal wetlands, for those that aren't familiar, they're very sensitive ecologically. They are a place that there's a lot of biodiversity there that needs to be protected. There are a lot of functions in the environment that wetlands fill, for instance, filtering our water, making sure that the water that comes out is clean. And what I see a lot of the times that really kind of makes me upset, people have learned that wetlands perform this function, and then they try to build a bunch of wetlands, which are not necessarily done in the right way. They're not done in an ecologically conscious way, and it's just a Band-Aid, or it's really just a PR move. And then of course, no one's monitoring it. Wetlands aren't exactly able to take on all of the pollution. There are limits to what they're able to do, but as long as someone has put it into their development plan that they're going to build a wetland, they think they get brownie points for doing that. And there's no follow-up and no checking in to make sure that it's serving its purpose. And our environment gets damaged in the process. So some of the specific questions were about things like, will the water quality be monitored? Yes, that is something we do. Now, in terms of the habitat and the biodiversity in that habitat, that's really something that's more under the Texas Department of Parks and Wildlife. But I think there's certainly a chance for the General Land Office to reinstate some programs that existed in the past to address some of those issues. And then in terms of the LNG pipelines, we're looking at really more of a federal level issue. But again, I expressed this when I visited in Brownsville before. When I talk about what I can do as the Texas Land Commissioner, I want to make it very clear that I'm not just about the things that are directly under my authority. As elected officials, as good Democrats, everyone up and down the ballot has a duty, in my opinion, to represent good democratic values. And I think that in this world today that we live in, that includes being an advocate. So what I would love to do is make sure that I go to the state legislature and that I go to Washington, D.C., and I advocate for Texas and our environment and making sure it's protected. So even though this is something that's under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, I would be happy and willing and actually excited to speak with those commission members and talk about the needs of Texas so that they can do the right thing by our coastal wetlands and our environment. I already spoke about SpaceX. I just think that we need to hold companies accountable. That's pretty much true no matter what I'm talking about. And I'm also looking forward to being part of a team. I would love to have a Democratic Railroad Commissioner and a Democratic Ag Commissioner and a comptroller. I've been in talks with, for instance, Janet Dudding about what she could do to help with the environment and the things that the General Land Office touches on. And I think if we have all of these people in place, and I'll be clear, it's not going to happen overnight. We all know that, but we have to work towards that. We have to continue to make sure that Democrats are motivated to get out the vote, and we find more Democrats to get out the vote so that eventually we will have more elected officials that represent our true Texas values. And then we can have a team in place. I don't think any single one person, I don't care if we're talking about governor or attorney general or, all the way down. I don't think there's one person that can take on our environment single-handedly. There's not one person that can answer our climate change issues by themselves. It really does require a team. And that's where, again, my experience as someone that has been an organizer, someone that works with the community, that someone that works with teammates, I think that comes in, that is very valuable with this kind of work and what I'm proposing we can do in the future. Now, moving to question number 3. Unless there are other questions about what I just spoke about. I can't see everyone on the screen right now, so if you do have a question, feel free to unmute and just speak up. Okay, I'll move on to number 3.
Which is posted. It's posted.
Oh, it is posted?
I posted it in the chat, so just check your chat, folks.
I see that now. Okay, so number 3. So oil and gas. I've already touched on a lot of these things. I'm coming from a very pro-science background. So my approach about climate change, for instance, I don't want to argue about who's responsible. I don't want to really get into pointing fingers. I'm all about accepting climate change is real. And I've been saying that since the beginning. If we can just all accept that it's real, then we can get to the real work. We can sit down, we can talk about what kinds of things we need to do to get in front of climate change. And I'll be honest that certainly it was no surprise that oil and gas, their PAC endorsed the most likely Republican nominee. That was not a surprise to me. However, I have been all over the state at this point. Not only have I visited South Texas, but I've been to West Texas. I'm in touch with East Texas. I'm going to be up there later this month. I have not stuck with just the big cities because I think that it's important for, again, our elected officials to represent all of Texas. And that's why I have done as much as I can to be out in front of people talking with them. And what I've seen and what I've learned is that really Texas knows that climate change is real and they see the writing on the wall. Whether they will admit it publicly, that's a different matter. But we see, for instance, oil and gas companies in West Texas putting solar panels on all of their parking structures. Why would they do that? They were so pro their own product. Why would they actually invest in solar panels on their parking structures? And I've also talked with working class families that work in oil and gas. Of course, they can't go on Twitter and say, hey, Exxon is the evil giant that you think it is, everyone should boycott, because that's their paycheck. They can't do that. But what are they telling their kids? They're telling them to maybe take a class or two in something that will help them get a job in wind or in geothermal. They know that that's the future. And so what I see in front of us is really a culmination of all these factors falling into place. We have the support of the public. We have the support of scientists. We have the support of the corporations. I think they need some massaging and some coaching and really talking to them and explaining that if you actually want to safeguard your futures, you will have to get on board and be part of the solution, because you should also know from your own scientists and your own research that this is not a sustainable product for the long term. And we need labor. I've actually been speaking a lot with AFL-CIO. They have actually launched their own climate change jobs initiative because they understand that they need to get in front of it. And they're working with their own union chapters to make sure that everyone is on board and talking about not just addressing requiring contracts to include labor clauses, but also making sure they address the demand. You know, people need jobs. Well, they need the demand to be there to have those jobs. So how do we make sure that the wind turbines are necessary? How do we make sure that solar panels are being installed? Well, we have to work on making sure that Texans are aware of the benefits of those products and they are asking for them so that people can have those jobs. So really, the last piece is our government piece. And that's, again, where I can do a lot of good from the General Land Office. And I'm happy to be part of a team with the railroad and the ag commissioner, the comptroller, attorney general, all the way up and down. And of course, I do not want to leave out local leaders. I see Beatrice on this Zoom today. And, you know, that's an example. I am very supportive of all good Democrats up and down the ballot, because I think we all need to be on the same page to get this job done. Are there any other questions about that? I hope I answered it fully. Oh, someone did ask about the art contest. I was actually didn't know about that. I did look up the art contest that's put on by Save a Beach, Treasures of the Texas Coast. My son actually did participate in the PTA contest. I don't know if you're familiar with the Texas PTA Reflections contest. He did that for a number of years. So I'm going to actually ask him about it. And I do have 2 cats. I'm not going to bore you with a photo of them. You can go on my Twitter and see it, but maybe they will be part of the artwork. We'll see. Okay, and then let's see. Oh, the land banking. Yes. Land banking. Okay, so I actually have some experience with this from before. I used to work with a landscape architecture firm. So for those that aren't familiar, when a developer proposes making, let's say, a shopping complex or an airport or something like that, oftentimes they're going to have an environmental effect. And in a place like Brownsville or Cameron County as a whole, you know, those environmental effects are often going to be on the wetlands. Now, how do we mitigate that? Well, a lot of times we require that they put in some kind of a compensation in terms of land. So maybe they destroy one wetland, well, they're expected to build another one. But that's where what I talked about earlier comes into play. it's not a one for one. Wetlands are a natural feature of our land. You can't just move it to another place and expect it to serve the same function. You can't expect the wildlife to just move over. We're not talking about moving apartment complexes. We're talking about animals and fish and insects and even our fauna. I mean, we're talking about plants and fungi. We're talking about all of that and trying to recreate that in another place. Now, in some cases, it can be done well, but oftentimes what we see are wetlands that are built. And again, they check that off their checklist. You know, maybe they had to fill out maybe they had to submit an environmental impact statement, and that was included in there, but no one follows up. No one checks on the health of the wetland. No one makes sure that it's doing its job. And again, we are losing wetlands in that process because it's not a one for one. So what I would suggest is certainly preserving as much of the wetlands as possible. And if there is development, making sure we have programs in place that do the checking up, that make sure that whatever requirements are included in the contract, the lease, whatever you're talking about, are adhered to, and in a meaningful way, not just in a way that they can check it off a list and say that they did their part to help save the environment, because we all know that that is not always true. And again, wetlands are very sensitive. I cannot emphasize that enough. They are very sensitive to environmental factors and especially development. They are not built to just take on as much development as we pile onto them and survive and thrive. So those, I believe, are the questions. Did I miss anything that somebody wanted me to address?
Are we good?
How about educating the public was the last one.
Thank you. So as you can tell, I'm a talker. I'm a candidate. I love talking. I love sharing with people about this race. And I've been doing the work. I've been out in front of people trying to educate them about what the land commissioner is, what the general land office does, because unfortunately in Texas, lots of people are not aware of positions like the general land commissioner. I've actually started a lot of meetings with the question to the audience: how many people know what a land commissioner is, and how many people know what they do? And I would say for the most part, less than 10% raise their hands. And the people that do raise their hands, it's usually because they either work there or had a relative work there, or maybe they were a contractor with the agency. I've even met people that worked in a very, not an insignificant part of the general land office, but maybe they worked in permits, right? But they don't actually know about what the rest of the land office does, because we haven't even gotten into things like disaster relief funds. We haven't talked about my hopes for transitioning to more renewables. We haven't talked about the mineral rights in West Texas. General land office does so many things, and most Texans aren't aware. And it's a shame because it actually does touch our lives. And I brought up a lot of the environmental things that we just talked about, but again, public schools, veterans benefits. For instance, the veterans benefits, we have a number of housing programs run by the general land office. They give home loans and home improvement loans and land improvement loans to veterans at good rates. But I have to say, most of the veterans I've spoken to on the campaign trail, they have no idea that these programs exist. What is the good of having a program on paper if no one knows it exists? So no matter what I'm talking about, I believe outreach is a huge part of the job of the land commissioner. We have to educate people about what that office does. And I would say on top of that, again, as a good Democrat, part of my job as a candidate and an elected official is to educate people about things like good democratic values like voting. We need to all unite together to make sure that we continue to elect great leaders for our state. Because if we just sit back and do nothing, it's clear what will happen. We've seen it happen over and over again. And now we're in a huge mess because after years, decades of mismanagement, of willful ignorance, and now the intentional spread of misinformation, people are dying in winter storms. People are not getting their money after Hurricane Harvey. People are suffering from attacks at school board meetings. I just actually, before I joined the Zoom today, we saw up here in Central Texas in Comal County, their offices were vandalized yesterday. Someone took a shovel and hit their glass door and damaged it. And the police department is refusing to investigate. because they said they don't investigate anything under $2,500 of damage, and they don't know if it's a political hate crime, so they're not going to investigate it as a political hate crime. Well, guess what? You can't find out if it's a political hate crime if you don't investigate whether or not it's a political hate crime. So that's the state of politics right now. I can tell everyone on this Zoom is fed up. I certainly am. And I'm happy to be part of a team that works together again to try and motivate people to come out and vote. And I'll just touch, I see some questions in the chat. I will get to them in just a second. I just want to emphasize the need for diversity. When I talk to people, especially in rural areas, especially amongst young voters, they feel like nothing matters. They feel like their vote doesn't matter. It never changes. Why bother? And they are struggling. They are struggling not only with the depressive effect of all the things that happened this past session and the new laws that are oppressing all of us, but they are stuck with what to do. And we have not really done a lot of year-round organizing in Texas as a Democratic Party. We have not done a lot of outreach. We've done a lot of talking with people on the I-35 corridor. But what are we doing to reach out to these people that feel disenfranchised and frankly abandoned? Well, that's why I've run my campaign very differently. I think that, you know, even if we get to Dallas and San Antonio and Austin and Houston, that is not enough at this point. You know, it's a razor thin edge between winning and losing. And what we need to do is make sure we visit all of Texas. And I understand there are blue dots in red seas all over the state, but you know what? I think when you get out there and you talk with them, they feel energized. They feel like they have something to care about. They will take that motivation and go and find, for instance, a babysitter for their kids so that they can find time to vote. They will take the time off of work. They will tell friends. They will find other blue dots in that red sea. And that's how we make change in Texas. So that is a huge part of my campaign. I think, you know, we're talking about supporting women candidates, people of color, women of color, LGBTQ. These are all important because right now our leaders do not represent us, and it's clear they don't represent our values. So I will finish my practiced speech with that and look at the chat again. So Jared has a question about the GLO's role in disaster recovery. I'm not familiar with, what does CDBG stand for? Can someone?
Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. That's the HUD monies that GLO gets.
Right.
Yeah, they split them with TDA.
So, you know, I still have to research all of the things that have happened with disaster relief, but what I can tell you is, yes, federal disaster relief funds, they go through the general land office. And what we're seeing right now is an abuse of power again, and political biases affecting the way that money is distributed. And it's affecting regular everyday people and whether or not they can recover from a natural disaster. And the biggest example that comes to mind is Houston. After Hurricane Harvey, the disaster relief funds, well, not even all of the funds. At this point, we were about half of the funds have actually gone to the office. There's another big chunk of money waiting. And you know why it's not there yet? Because George P. Bush filled out the paperwork wrong. He has, I think, 45 days to correct it, and then he can get more money. But they set up a way to decide how to distribute the money. That was a matrix, and it basically penalized high density populations. So guess who got left out? Harris County and Houston. There are people still in Houston who don't have their homes rebuilt. They have a tarp as their roof. And this is really unacceptable. And again, I don't think that George P. cares. I think that he looks at it and he doesn't have any way to understand. He's probably never had to worry about whether he's going to have the next meal in front of him. And he's certainly never had to worry about whether or not he'd have a roof over his head. So how can we expect him to prioritize people? And that's really what I would do as Texas Land Commissioner: prioritize people, make sure they get their money, make sure they get it quickly so that they can recover from the natural disaster. That's the only question I see. I've already spoken for about 30 minutes or so, so I'm happy to answer any other questions from you all, or I can stop here and tell you a little bit about my website and things like that. What would you like me to do, Maria?
Go ahead and talk about a little bit about your website.
Sure. So you can find out more about me on at JinnySuhForTexas.com. You'll find more about my background. I came from immigrant parents. I grew up without a lot of things, and I have certainly accomplished a lot, but I just want to make it clear that it doesn't mean that I've always had all the privilege in the world. And I think that gives me an advantage in terms of this job because I understand what people need and what the priorities should be to help them. You'll also see, you know, the things that most candidates have. You know, if you'd like to volunteer, if you'd like to sign up for our email newsletter, you're welcome to do that. Links to my social media. And if you are able to support the campaign at all, again, this is a very grassroots campaign. This is all about the people. And I am very strong about making sure that basically, if this campaign is not supported by the people, then I have no business running. I'll be honest about that. And I don't come from wealth. I do not have the ability to start this campaign with $1 million in the bank from my family wealth or anything like that. I do have these 2 small kids, and I actually still work for a living. I have to be in an office every Wednesday to keep my job. And that is part of the reason why I can't just be on a bus touring all of Texas 7 days a week. And I always say this, I know it sounds really cliche, but my kids will know in 10 years that I ran for office. I'll always be proud of that. I'll always be proud of the effect that I had on Texas and for my community. But you know what they'll remember a lot more is if I got their college fund to do it. So I'm not about to do that to them. They don't deserve that. They deserve to have parents that can do what they can to take care of their kids. So this is really a people-driven campaign. It's about all of you, everyone in Texas, choosing who they think will be the best leader. And I'm here to tell you that I will be an amazing Texas Land Commissioner for all of you, and I will never forget what I need to do to serve Texans.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I really appreciate that. I think I speak on behalf of all of us. We're very impressed. We are rooting for you, and hopefully we can also help you make the change that you speak of.